Shalom, truth seekers. Today, we're going to be going over the Passover. It's going to be in Exodus 12, verses 1 through 28. And I want to talk about the Passover because we have Passover coming up this next week. And on April the 7th of this year, the new moon was spotted in Israel. And so that was the beginning of this month. This month, the barley is, they've also confirmed that the barley is ripe in Israel. So this would be the month of Abib, and the new moon was spotted on April the 7th, which would be the first day of the month, and which means that Passover is going to be on April the 20th. On Yahuwah's calendar, that would be on the 14th day of the month, but on the Gregorian calendar, it's April the 20th. And then unleavened bread is April the 21st through the 27th. And it says in the scripture that the first and the last day are considered Sabbaths of unleavened bread. And so the 21st, which is a Sunday, is going to be considered a Sabbath. The 27th is also considered a high Sabbath, but it's also the weekly Sabbath. Okay? So, and then April the 28th is the day of first fruits, and that's the day we start counting the Omer up that leads up to Shavuot. So we count for 50 days, which is 49 Sabbaths in one day, and we count to Shavuot or Pentecost, however you want to look at it. The Greek is Pentecost. The Hebrew is Shavuot. Okay, I'll go through these dates again at the end, so you'll you'll have them. You won't have to go back through the video to get these dates. In verse 1 of chapter 12, Exodus, it says, "Now Yahuwah said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, This month is the beginning of months for you. It shall be the first month of your year." Okay, so I explained a minute ago that the new moon was spotted in April, on April the 7th of this year. And so that was the beginning of the month of Abib, the first month of the year. So after the vernal equinox, when the new moon is spotted, that's the new month. As long as the barley is ripe in Israel. And when I say ripe or in the Abib stage, it's like corn on the cob. If you can eat corn on the cob, it's that corn on the cob is in the Abib stage. It's ripe, but it's not dried or hardened to where you have to grind it into flour. It's edible right off the stalk or the ear. So this would be the beginning of the month, starting on April the 7th. Okay? Verse 3, it says, "Tell the whole congregation of Israel that on the 10th day of the month, each man must select a lamb for his family, one per household. If the household is too small for the whole lamb, they are to share it with their nearest neighbor based on the number of people. Apportion the lamb accordingly." All right. So on the 10th day of the month, they take this lamb, they pick this unblemished lamb of 1 year old, and they bring it into the house and they raise it with the family, or they have it in there and it becomes one of the family. And the family will become emotionally attached to this animal. So when it comes time to sacrifice, it's going to be a significant emotional event at the time of the sacrifice. And it's designed to be that way because we should be significantly emotionally attached to Yeshua, the Messiah. And we should be very honored and deeply appreciative for him going to the cross and dying so that we don't have to. And so on the 10th day of the month, like I said, they bring the lamb into the house. Now, this is very significant in that on the 10th day of the month, when Yeshua rode into Jerusalem on the donkey, the unbroke colt, then that was on the 10th day of the month. So when the lambs were being brought into the house, Yeshua was being brought into the house, into Yahuwah's house, into there in Jerusalem. Okay, verse 5, it says, "Your lamb must be unblemished, a year old. You may take it from the sheep or the goats. You must care for it until the 14th day of the month, when the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel will slaughter the animal at twilight. they are to take some of the blood and put it on the two side posts and the top of the door frame of the house in which they are to eat the lambs. Okay, so now they're on the 14th day of the month, which will be April the 20th this year. They will take this lamb and they slaughtered it, and they take some of the blood, put the blood on the doorposts of their house. Now, this relates to the Messiah in that him being this unblemished lamb. He is our sacrifice now. So when we sin, we don't kill animals anymore because he is that final sacrifice. He fulfilled the duties of the animals being sacrificed, and he took that on himself. And now he is our final sacrifice. So when we sin, we need to ask Yahuwah to take Yeshua's blood and apply it to that sin and atone for that sin. Okay? And that's something we need to do very regular. Okay? To cover our sins. And when Moses and them, they took the blood of this lamb and put it on the doorpost of the house, then when we apply the blood to our lives, our door is our heart. In other words, the blood is applied to us, and when you put Yahuwah's word in our heart and in our mind, then we are to live his Torah, and that Torah is what protects us from the death angel in the end. Okay? In verse 8, they are to eat the meat at night, roasted with fire, along with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Okay. So they're to eat it roasted with fire. The meat roasted with fire is the sacrifice to Yahuwah. Okay. The bitter herb reminds us of the bitterness that was that the Egyptians placed upon the nation or the children of Israel, and the unleavened bread represents a sinless living bread. In other words, he is the living bread. He is the bread of life, and it is unleavened. Now, that is the representation of Yeshua. Leaven represents sin, and so the unleavened bread represents the Messiah. It says, do not eat any of the meat raw or cooked in water, but only roasted in fire, with its head and its legs and its inner parts. Do not leave any of it until morning. Before the morning, it must be burned up, and any part that's left over must be destroyed. Okay. Now, there's quite a few things here, several things here. It's supposed to be, the lamb was cooked over a fire, which was a burnt offering to Yahuwah, and not cooked in water, but roasted over fire. Again, like I say, that roasted over fire is the sweet savor unto Yahuwah, and it's the sacrifice, the burnt offering unto Yahuwah, with its head and its legs and its inner parts intact. All right, so why would that be? And there's a reason. Because when the lamb is supposed to be without blemish, and none of his bones broke. Well, if you cut the skin, then it's blemished. If you break a leg, or it's blemished. So before it's sacrificed, it has to be burnt complete. Okay? Now, when it says do not leave any of it until morning, if you'll remember, when the Messiah was crucified, him being the Passover lamb, when the Messiah was crucified, they couldn't leave him on the cross till morning. They had to take him down and get him in the grave. So this is the representation. This not leaving any of it till morning represents after he has died that the Messiah had to be put in the grave. Okay? Verse 11, it says, this is how you are to eat it. You must be fully dressed, ready for travel, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. You are to eat it in haste. It is Yahuwah's Passover. Okay, now, traditionally, in Judaism, they during the Seder meal, they recline. It's a big, long, drawn-out deal. It may last 2 or 3 hours. And so, that is the tradition. And they would have a lot of different things in the Seder meal that represent different things, but it's stuff that's all added to what's said right here. Now, what does it actually say, and what do you think we need to do to comply? Okay, I'll tell you what I think. Okay, so we need to be fully dressed, just as it says there in 11. We need to, if you wear a cap, you need to have it on. If you wear a hat, you need to have it on. If you carry a staff, you need to carry it, have it in your hand, and you need to eat this standing up, ready to go, just in case something happens and we have to make a hasty flight for whatever reason. So once the Passover meal is over and everything seems to seems to be okay, that we're not going to have to make a hasty flight just yet, then, we have a convocation. We sit down and we talk and we'll discuss the Passover. Okay, now, verse 12. On that night I will pass through the land of Egypt and strike down every firstborn male, both man and beast, and I will execute judgment against the gods of Egypt. I am Yahuwah. The blood on the houses where you are staying will distinguish them, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you. No plague will befall you or destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. Now, so this blood on the doorpost is going to protect us, or protect them. The blood on our doorpost, which is the Messiah's blood on our heart, is going to protect us. The blood on their doorpost is going to protect them. Okay? The blood on the cross at the time that Yeshua was crucified, that blood on the doorpost is a representative of the blood on the cross when Yeshua was crucified. Okay? Now, verse 14. And this day will be a memorial for you. You are to celebrate it as a feast unto Yahuwah, as a lasting ordinance for all the generations to come. Okay, think about that. For 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. On the first day you are to remove all the yeast from your houses. Whoever eats anything leavened from the first day through the 7th day will be cut off from Israel. All right. When it says that you're supposed to keep this as a memorial unto Yahuwah forever, I know I've heard a lot of preachers say, well, this is just for the Jews. We don't have to keep these feast days. Well, that's true. It is only for the Jews. It's not for the one. It's not for the Gentiles. Okay, but here's the kicker. Even if you're a Gentile and you do as Revelation 14:12, if you keep the commandments and believe that Yeshua is the Messiah, he is the Son of Yahuwah, then you are grafted into Yeshua, the olive tree. Okay? So Yeshua being the line of the tribe of Judah, Yehuda, then if we're grafted in, as John chapter 15 says, then we become also Judah, Yehuda. All right. So, if you consider yourself a Gentile, then you're not part of this. Only if you consider yourself grafted in through the Messiah. If you're attached to the Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus, then you are part of Yehuda, Judah, and therefore you are a Jew. Okay, so again, if you're in the family, if you belong to Yeshua, if you're a Jew, Yehuda, then it says that it's required that you keep the Passover as a memorial ordinance. It's a memorial as a lasting ordinance for all your generations to come forever. Okay, and for 7 days we're to eat unleavened bread, and not eat leavened bread, anything that's puffed up. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to get everything out of our house that has leaven. So all yeast, all baking powder, baking soda is also considered a chemical leaven. Anything that where the bread has risen or puffed up, we need to get rid of that. Any cornbread mix, cookie mix, cake mix, brownie mix, anything that's got leaven, which got baking powder or baking soda or yeast, you need to get it out of the house. Breadcrumbs would be, is going to be, if you have, breadcrumbs for seasoning or whatever, you need to get that stuff out of the house. Anything, you need to look at the label and the ingredients, and you need to get everything out of the house that has leaven in it. Okay? Verse 16, it says, on the first day you are to hold a sacred assembly, and another on the seventh day. You must not do any work on those days except to prepare meals, and this is all that you may do. So on the April the 21st and the 27th, they're both considered Sabbaths. Then the 21st is a Sunday, but it's considered a Sabbath because it's a high Sabbath. It's the first day of unleavened bread. And then the 27th is the normal weekly Sabbath, but it's also considered a high Sabbath because it's the last day of unleavened bread. We're supposed to keep both of those days as a Sabbath. Okay, verse 17. So you are to observe the feast of unleavened bread, for on this day I brought your divisions out of the land of Egypt. You must observe this day as a lasting ordinance for the generations to come. In the first month you are to eat unleavened bread from the evening of the 14th day until the evening of the 21st day. For 7 days there must be no yeast found in your houses. If anyone eats something leavened, that person, whether a foreigner or native in the land, must be cut off from the congregation of Israel. You are to not eat anything leavened. Eat only unleavened bread in all your houses. Okay, so we need to eat unleavened bread. Now, the unleavened bread, you can go to the store and you can buy unleavened bread. It's in the larger grocery stores. It's called matzah. You can buy it. It's Jewish made. Now, a lot of them will say it's not for Passover, but again, if it's unleavened bread, it's okay. All right. And I make tortillas, and I make them out of flour, salt, water, and olive oil. I don't put any baking soda, baking powder, anything like that in it. But anyway, I just use flour, salt, olive oil, and water, and I make my own tortillas, and they're all unleavened bread, and that's what we eat. But you do need to eat unleavened bread every day, whether it's just a bite or two or a bunch, it doesn't matter, just as long as you eat unleavened bread, and let it be a reminder that represents the body of Yeshua, that is to represent the Messiah. And so you eat unleavened bread, but do not eat leavened bread. All right. Then 21, it says, and Moses summoned all the elders of Israel and told them, go at once and select for yourselves a lamb for each family and slaughter the Passover lamb. Take a cluster of hyssop, dip it into the blood in the basin, and brush the top of the 2 side posts in the door frame with some of the blood. None of you shall go out your door of your house until morning. All right, so this is Moses giving them the commandment to go ahead and slaughter the lamb and put it on the doorpost of the house. Then in 23, it says, when Yahuwah passes through to strike down the Egyptians, he will see the blood on the top and the 2 side posts and pass over the door. So he will not allow the destroyer to enter your house and strike you down. Verse 24, it says, and you are to keep this commandment as a perpetual ordinance for you and your descendants forever. Whenever you enter the land that Yahuwah will give you as he promised, you are to observe this service. All right, so now a perpetual ordinance is something that never ends. And it tells you in several places you're to keep this forever. So if you consider yourself part of the new covenant, if you go to Hebrews chapter 8, starting in verse 8, I believe, it talks about the new covenant. That is given the new covenant. And it is to the nation of Israel, or the house of Israel and Judah. It does not include Gentiles. If you are a Gentile and you don't keep the covenant, then it doesn't apply to you. But if you're grafted in through the Yeshua, the Messiah, then it does apply to you. So you are to keep this as an ordinance forever. Okay, 26, it says, when your children ask you, what does this service mean to you? You are to reply, it is the Passover sacrifice unto Yahuwah, who passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt when he struck down the Egyptians and spared our homes. Then the people bowed down and worshipped, and the Israelites went and did just what Yahuwah had commanded Moses and Aaron. Okay, so here Moses gave the people the order to go ahead and slaughter the lamb, put it on the doorpost, and stay in your house. Don't come out. And they did as they were told. So, I mentioned being part of Israel and Judah. The new covenant is very clear. It's not to the Gentiles. Okay? It's to Israel and Judah. So if you want to be part of the new covenant, then you need to figure out how to be Israel or Judah. Well, again, just read John chapter 15. And it's to be grafted in through the Messiah. Now, you got to understand that the Messiah, as in John chapter 1, verse 1, is in the Word, in the beginning was the Word was with Yahuwah, and the Word was Yahuwah. So this Word that you're looking at is the Torah. It's the only Word that Yahuwah has given us up at that point. So he's talking about the Torah was made flesh. And the Torah was, when the Torah was made flesh and dwelt among us, then that living Torah, that living Word, him being the Torah, then if you have to line up with the Torah to be grafted into him, you have to be what he is. So anyway, part of the new covenant is, if you read Revelation 14:12, it's those that keep the commandments of Yahuwah and have the faith in Yeshua the Messiah. So if you want to be part of the new covenant, that's how you line up. And if you line up to that, then you need to make sure that you start observing these feast days. All right. Again, the new moon was sighted on April the 7th of this year. So Passover is the afternoon of April the 20th. The week of unleavened bread starts the next day on April the 21st and goes through the 27th, which the 21st and the 27th will both be considered Sabbaths, and the 28th is the first fruits. It's when you start counting the Omer up to Shavuot or Pentecost. All right, people, I thank you for listening. I appreciate you sticking with me on this, and hopefully maybe you pick something up out of it that you didn't already know. And I'm going to, start preparing, trying to get ready for Shavuot and start preparing a message or a discussion for that. And so if you like the video, I would ask that you click the like button or the thumbs up. And if you have questions or like to leave comments, go down to the bottom and leave a comment, and also ask you to subscribe. So again, I thank you for watching, and I guess we'll see you next time. Shalom.